Welcome to Crema Media's Polity. I'm Martin Zhuwakinyu. I'm in the studio to meet with Jens Pedersen to discuss nation building in South Sudan and recent developments in that part of the African continent. Welcome, Jens.
Thank you very much.
Jens, what are the political ramifications of the South Sudanese government building its own pipeline to the Kenyan port of Lamu?
Well, the intention to build the pipeline from South Sudan to Lamu has several implications, among which some are political. Most importantly, between the two nations are the potential economic ramifications. Mm-hmm. In fact, the CPA from 2005 included a sharing of oil revenues between South Sudan and Sudan.
CPA is Comprehensive Peace Agreement.
Correct.
Yes.
The Comprehensive Peace Agreement from 2005 included a 50-50% sharing of oil revenues. Now, since the independence of South Sudan has relied on Sudanese infrastructure to export and refine and load into ships the oil. Mm-hmm. That was supposed to include agreements on various transit and user fees, which would have been a reasonable source of income for Sudan as well. Now, with the shutdown of oil exports from South Sudan, the government in Khartoum no longer has that access of revenue or access to income. Mm-hmm. So the political ramifications, given the hostilities between the two nations, is that the ball has shifted somehow with the SPLM, the Sudanese People Liberation Movement in Juba, South Sudan.
That's the ruling party in South Sudan.
That's the ruling party in South Sudan, has now played a trump card in the ongoing negotiations between Sudan and South Sudan. The reason being many parts of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement remains outstanding and negotiations are ongoing with regards to the CPA and with regards to recent hostilities in the border areas. So the SPLM has taken from Khartoum a leverage, one of the few remaining non-military leverages for the Khartoum government, which was the oil passing through Sudan.
I see. Now, some observers say that this move by the South Sudanese government is economic suicide. What is your take on that?
It certainly holds a lot of risk for South Sudan economically, mostly because 98% of the SPLM government's revenue comes from the oil, would have come from the oil. Now they have to find alternative ways of securing substantial amount of money. They have initiated certain macroeconomic initiatives. They are planning on increasing tax collection, which in itself in South Sudan, with limited infrastructure and limited tax base, is very difficult. So it holds some risk because South Sudan faces many economic development challenges, which, if they remain unfulfilled, may not bode well for the SPLM government. So basically they have to go and find the money that they will not get from oil elsewhere.
And how does this move affect regional stakeholders like the Chinese, for instance, who obtain about 5% of their oil revenue from South Sudan or from Sudan generally?
Well, let's say if South Sudan maintains the oil in the ground, China will have to find 5% of its oil elsewhere. Or they will have to engage with the two parties, Sudan and South Sudan, to ensure that the pumping and the processing and refinement of oil gets restarted. 5% may not sound of much, but for China it's a rather large amount of their total oil consumption. So of course they have an interest in maintaining the supply. Furthermore, on a regional level, it plays out some of the regional countries such as Ethiopia and Kenya in between South Sudan and Sudan. The pipeline goes through Kenya. Kenya has interest in both Sudan and in South Sudan, just as well as Ethiopia has interest in both Sudan
and the two Sudanese
and South Sudan.
Now, Jens, you say that President Omar Hassan el-Bashir is walking a tightrope in terms of satisfying both internal and international politics in the Sudan. Can you please elaborate on this?
Since the April 2010 elections in Sudan, Omar Hassan al-Bashir kind of fortified his powers among some of the hardliners in Khartoum. He has, from the same group of hardliners within his party, the National Congress Party, within security and military apparatus, been criticized for letting the South go, for not making unity attractive, as one of the intentions in the Comprehensive Peace Agreement was. So he has faced increased pressure from within his own party, but more importantly from our hardliners outside the party. And the recent development with the oil being shut down intensifies this pressure, because Sudan, the government in Sudan, are facing severe financial difficulties in terms of inflation, in terms of decreasing foreign currency reserves and lack of international investment. So he is having to walk a tightrope in between securing the hardliners who at some point and to some extent still back him, and trying to keep the country afloat financially as well as politically.
I see. Now, finally, Jens, what are the major threats to South Sudan's security, and what is the chief cause of the current unrest that we are seeing in that part of Africa?
The main source of unrest, or the one that gets the most attention rather at the moment, is at the border with Sudan, where forces from both sides have been engaged in fighting in the past 2 weeks, more or less. However, inside of South Sudan, several rebel groups or renegade militias are causing security concerns as well. South Sudan is a vast country, and the infrastructure makes it difficult to reach some of the very remote areas where some militia groups remain inaccessible. So they are causing insecurity on local level towards the population, but they're also, by the lack of capacity from the government to quell these or deal with these security issues, they may subsequently also undermine indirectly the SPLM government.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Jens. That was Jens Pedersen discussing nation building in South Sudan. Thank you.